Hi, I'm Professor Green, and we're going to go talk about Chapter 13 today, Visual Aids. This is taken from the Public Speaking Project. So there'll be 5 sections today of visual aids. We're going to start with defining what is an effective visual aid. Then we're going to talk about the types of visual aids, the design principles, implementation, and then end with a visualization tip. So let's go ahead and get started. So effective visual aids, what you want to do first is select one that enhances your presentation. So if you have a lot of statistics, for example, a PowerPoint slide, deck of slides could be really, really effective, right? Because you're going to have numbers, you're going to have vocabulary, you're going to have sources that you need to cite. So a really nice way to document that and allowing the audience to read it as well as to hear it. So think about something that will affect your particular presentation. Often I have students that talk about birds or about things that they have at home, clothing. So then again, that might be an effective visual aid, bringing the actual bird into the Zoom session or bringing the piece of clothing. So really think about what would be most effective for your topic. The second bullet point here says that visual aids can be an important part of conveying your message effectively since people learn far more by hearing and seeing than through hearing or seeing alone, right? And that probably resonates for a lot of us, right? That if we're just listening to someone, a portion of the speech will sink in, but if we're watching something at the same time, it's much more effective, right? We see photos, we see words, we see potential videos, so it helps to bring that connection back and it helps to let the audience remember your speech after you leave the room or leave the Zoom session. Let's go ahead and hop into the next slide. We're going to talk now about types of visual aids. So what is a visual aid? The first one that they mention here is your personal appearance, right? And so that's what you're wearing, how you do your hair, how you do your makeup. So you want to look professional all the time, right? Usually for presentations, we'll comb our hair, we'll maybe put in some hairspray or some mousse. And if we're women, we will put on some makeup. I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, and so I always wear something that looks professional. Then we also talk about objects and props when we talk about visual aids. As I mentioned, if people are talking about their pet bird, they might want to bring the bird to class. Or if they're talking about clothing, they might want to bring that. So the nice thing about doing a Zoom session is that you're at home or you're in your office, somewhere you probably have more access to objects and props than you would in a standard auditorium. So it's really nice that you can bring in these things easily and make them more accessible for your audience. Demonstration is also considered a visual aid, right? A demonstration is if you're doing a cooking class or if you're showing people how to knit, different things that actually demonstrate or show someone something. Really nice way to bring that into your presentation. So you're not just telling them about the sauce or telling them about the cheese that you add to the tamales. You're actually showing them how it is and how it comes together. Posters and flip charts, right? So again, this is more applicable to if you're working live. A poster, right? Something that we would see pinned up somewhere, and a flip chart, for those who don't know, is right those big notepads that hang on an easel, and then you flip the piece of paper over the top of the easel. Audio and video. So they say video now is one of the most effective ways of communicating. I highly, highly suggest that whatever type of speech you're giving, show a little short video clip of 10, 15, 30 seconds, because it is so, so powerful to keep people's attention and have them remember your speech. Audio can also be super effective. There are places like SoundCloud or podcasts that just give an audio file of a meditation, of a prayer, of a speech. For example, Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, that's hard to find on video these days, but the audio file is super, super effective. So lots of different, ways through hearing and through seeing that we can help to portray the information that we're containing in our speech. Handouts, again, this is more effective if you are in a real live auditorium, so handing them a piece of paper. If you're doing this electronically, feel free to email them a sheet, a PDF before or after your speech to help them remember. And lastly, the most important one probably is slideware, right? So this is what we're looking at now, a PowerPoint slide. Google Slides is also super, super popular and effective. And it's up to you how complex you want to make your slideware, right? Pretty basic or more advanced, like mine are here, with uh, some audio and visual pieces that I include in my slideware. I personally don't create the slidewares myself because it's not my strong suit. I create the content and then I hand it over to a graphic designer to pull that all together. So it's very cost efficient to hire a graphic designer to do this if that's something that you wanted to do. Also, there are softwares out there that you can Google that are free that give you really nice backgrounds and themes and can make your slideware a little bit fancier than what you might do with a basic template. Good. So those are the types of visual aids. Now, hopefully we all have an idea of what it is that we're talking about when we mention visual aids. We're going to hop now into design principles. Very important, right? So consultants, people who make a lot of money off of conveying information, they become pros at these design principles. First, you want to think about your slide layout. So where on the slide is the information sitting, right? Is it going to be in the middle? Make sure it's not too far over to the left or to the right, up or down, etc. So you just want to make sure it's symmetrical and that it's pleasing to the eye. Then you want to talk about backgrounds and effects, right? So a background, here I have some books, and that's appropriate because I'm talking about visual aids, which a book could be. I'm also talking about it in a more academic environment. So a book is a nice reference. And then effects, this is how these numbers and words slide in and out. So it's what is called animation, is another word for effects. So you can think about doing something like that if that calls to you. We want to think about also the colors, right? Are there certain colors that resonate with your theme? If you're talking about the environment, maybe you want to choose colors like brown and green. Or if you're talking about something that is, they really want to catch people's attention, like violent video games, and maybe red or black might be more appropriate to use. So thinking about which colors maybe represent your theme, your idea, and also not using too many colors, right? So if I remember correctly from when I took art in elementary school, they say typically to start with just two colors. Don't use the whole rainbow. Just use two colors as your main base colors. Good. And so for just to mention that, so my two colors here on this slide are red and blue, right? I'm using different shades of red and different shades of blue. So now we're going to talk about fonts. The most important part of knowing about fonts is keeping them consistent, right? And so not jumping from different types of fonts, which is easy to do because especially if you cut and paste information, cut and paste quotes, or cut and paste sources, you might be cutting and pasting the font from another source. So just make sure that all your fonts are uniform. Also make sure that the font size is legible. It's not too small and also not too big that kind of takes over the page. And also a font that resonates maybe with your theme. So if you're speaking about a children's theme, maybe you'll use, that have that crayon font, or if you're thinking about doing something more professional, then you would use the Arial or the Times New Roman. Talking about your text, right? Don't put too much text on your slide. For beginning public speakers, this is often the case because when we start to speak, we want to have a lot of reference for what it is that we want to say. And so it's tempting to put our whole speech on the slides or on our visual aid. But we don't want to do that. We just want to put the key words and the key points. So just be really careful about not overdoing your text, and then and just making sure that your text looks nice and is legible. And then images, super useful, right? As I said, I have some images here that I'm using, some books, um, but maybe you're going to use a small image depending on the topic. If you're talking about global warming, for example, maybe you'll use an image of a globe, or you'll use an image of a sun and a cloud or something like that. So something simple that might represent the idea that you're talking about and allow the audience member to connect that symbol with your message. Great. So the last piece here are graphs and charts. And so this is a really super useful way to convey information, right? Because it gives people numbers and colors and symbols to understand information. It's often research, and the sources get cited, so you have really valuable information in a graph or a chart. What you want to make sure, though, is that the audience can read it legibly and that you explain it well, right? So you want to make sure that the graph or the chart is not too small. Also that it sits properly on your slide, and also that you take them through the X and Y axis and really giving them the full synopsis of what the conclusion is for that graph or that chart and how that pertains to your speech. Very often people like to kind of cruise through graphs and charts and let the audience read it for themselves, but I highly recommend that the speaker walk them through each graph or chart that they show. Great. Okay, now we're going to hop into the implementation. There are two pieces to your implementation. First and foremost, please cite your sources, right? So anytime you quote someone, anytime you show a photo or a video, or you show a graph or a chart, you need to include a web address at the bottom of that, or you need to mention the author's name and the year that it was published. So those are two popular ways to cite your sources on Slideware. And you want to make sure that they're able to grab that information, an audience member is able to see that information and then be able to find that information after your speech. The second important piece of implementation is practice, right? That practicing really allows you to move through the content beforehand and make sure that you're confident about what you're going to say, especially when it comes to visual aids. There are a lot of hurdles sometimes that come from visual aids, right? Are you properly sharing your slides? Are you properly able to see the chart? Are you sharing your audio, right? So really simple things, but it can really create a big hurdle. Like, so for example, when people share something on Zoom, you want to make sure that the bottom of the share screen page has a little checkbox that says share your audio. So if you're going to be doing a video, you want to make sure that you check that box. So all these little things to just cover as you prepare for your speech. I highly recommend also recording yourself when you do your practice session, so that you can go back and see it and read it and hear it, so that it all makes sense to you. Great, and that's it. So those were my visual aid tips. Just curious to see if anyone has any questions. Just let me know. Again, this is Ingrid Green, and this was Visual Aids, Chapter 13. Thank you so much for coming.